This is Gilbert Ferguson, and Gilbert Ferguson is an icon in our church for a number of reasons, one of which is that he's been around here longer than anybody else I know. When you count both the time at Laurel Street and the time at St. Andrews, there are not many people who remember the history of Laurel Street the way you do, Gilbert. And so I wanted to talk to you a few minutes tonight about Laurel Street Church, and then after we finish talking about, I mean, we'll never finish really talking about Laurel Street, but as we move on from that, then we'll talk about the beginnings of St. Andrews and how St. Andrews has developed in those years since about 1968. Gilbert, what is your very first memory of Laurel Street Methodist Church?
Very first memory, we were new in the neighborhood, and I was a lad of about 14 and a half years old. My family moved in, and of course my mother, God bless her, was a great Methodist. So that one of the first things she started looking for was a Methodist church in the area. So down at 401 South Laurel was a good old Methodist church. So she hauled the Ferguson family around there after she got settled a little bit. And I remember quite well that church. I remember going into the basement, and some of the things that really impressed me in that basement was we fuss now in churches because we don't have a lot of things to work with. We need this and we need that. Well, we had a basement down there, and we must have had 10 Sunday school classes in it, and everybody got his lesson in every Sunday. Everybody took care of his particular class. And one of the classes that they had down there that really impressed me was, they called it the number 11 Bible class. Every man in that Bible class was a Mason, and they met in the basement along with the others. So my first day down there, I saw a lot, and some of those things maybe I saw a little bit later, but I remember going in that, when you went off of Laurel Street, you went on down 4 or 5 steps and you went into the basement. And I really did, it impressed me, the whole thing did. And like I said, my mother raised me a Methodist. I was more concerned about that than I was anything else.
You were in high school then, weren't you, when you moved into Oregon Hill?
Yeah.
Where did you go to high school?
I started down to John Marshall High School, or that was everybody's intent, but we had a depression going, and my life could change completely when things in my home when nobody had work. And anybody they could go out and get work, so then I had to go get my education under the stars.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time, and I was still being educated when I left the Continental Baking Company 50 years later.
So you got a lot of your education at the Continental Baking Company?
I sure did, and I got some good education there.
And that was close enough to walk too, wasn't it?
Yeah, because they brought in people down there every so often that gave you 3 months of, they brought in college professors, and they would teach you things that would be related to the business. And it really did help me in many areas.
Now, did you meet your wife at Laurel Street?
No, I worked in the grocery store at West Ham Grocery Company, located at Laurel and Curry. And there was a lady, one of our customers that lived about a half a block away, that was an alumnus of William and Murray. And she taught some classes down at the YWCA. And for some reason or another, she took a liking to me in the grocery store. And she said, "Gilbert, I've got just a girl for you." And so she kept telling me that. So finally, one day she came in, and on a Thursday, she says, "Tomorrow she's coming over to class," and says, "I'm going to bring her up here, and we're going to have lunch. And I'm going to bring her up here to meet you." And fellas, you can definitely fall in love with a girl. It don't have to be 6 months. It can be very quick. And she was absolutely a sweetheart.
Love at first sight with Jesse, huh?
Just about.
What year were you all married?
1936.
Were you married in Laurel Street Church?
I was married at 2215 Maplewood Avenue, the parsonage of Laurel Street Methodist Church, which made me extremely happy. And some of my family was there, some of hers too. And Dr. Robinson was, he was a minister, and he was the one who performed the marriage.
Tell me about some of the years as you and Jesse were married and as you started your family, and tell me about how you were related to Laurel Street Church in those days.
Very closely. I married this wonderful girl that I just mentioned to you earlier on a Monday, and the following Sunday when I told her, I said, "You been going to Burma, and I don't take people away from the churches, and if you want to continue to go to Burma, that's fine." And she said, "Well, I'd like to go around and try Laurel Street, your church." And so the first Sunday we were married, she went there, and the people there was the most congenial people. You went in that place, you'd have a little problem getting out because everybody was going to stop you. I mean, they were so glad to see you. I mean, they were very loving and kind and welcoming people. And so they just loved my girl. And we had a lady back in the primary department that had been back there already for many years, who was running it by the name of Rosa Gasser. And she gave her a job the very first Sunday that she joined Laurel Street Church. And the second Sunday she was there, she was back into the primary department. And she stayed in that primary department until that church burned down on January the 15th, 1968. That's how long my Jessie was in that primary department. She and Rosa Gasser, one spent 30-some years and the other one 47. And I had a sister that spent 25 back there, incidentally, also. So that we were tied in very closely with the church.
What ministers do you remember during those years?
Well, I remember Dr. Robinson. I remember some of them you do want to remember, some of them you don't.
What are you trying to tell me, Gilbert?
Oh, boy. No, all of them were really good, I thought. Dr. Robinson, who married us, was one of our favorites, and he made many accomplishments while he was there. And we had many others there. But the one that came to us when we was in such dying straits was in 1949, when we were trying to get on our feet to have our 100th anniversary, and we had no minister. And we got Raleigh Mann in August of 1949, and he, as I said, he was like a gift from above for all of us, and everybody loved him. And when you saw him and he had that smile, he just looked at you and he smiled at you, and he just stole your heart. He was that kind of a person. And he loved people, and so naturally he was always knocking on your door. He was just really a wonderful pastor. He really was.
The anniversary. Tell me about that. Was a centennial anniversary in 1949. I know it was really a year-long celebration, wasn't it?
Well, not really. We, as I said earlier, we didn't have a minister, and we were trying to get things going. And I'd gotten there that Sunday morning. My good wife, my son, who was a little 6-year-old boy at that time, and they were back in the primary department, and I was sitting there on one of those deacon benches, and a lady came in, one of our long time members, and she brought a visitor. And as she got inside, she stood there for a little bit, and she's telling this lady, her friend, how much she really loved this place, and about her mother and father going there, and now she was going, and her children, 3 generations of the Witt families was coming to that church. This was Elsie Witt. Her married name was Elsie Fincham. And Elsie is standing at that door. I can see her now, telling that lady how much this church meant to her. Then she changed, and she all of a sudden, she said, I want to apologize. That's the way it looks. She says, I'm really sorry that it looks so bad. Fellows, the good Lord put something in my mind that I was sitting on that deacon's bench. And I heard every word that that good lady said. And I remembered all of the covenants that the good Lord had made in that Old Testament, on many of them, to the people. And I said, I'm going to make one too. And I said, if you will give me the support of these people, we will change this place. And fellas, one of the greatest years of my life, without question, happened in 1949. And a board met the following week, and I presented a program, and they said, Gilbert, what's wrong with you? You're just out of this world. We don't have any money. We don't, what you want to do is fine. But, we're just not in position to do it. And I said, well, we'll make some money. We'll get it done. If I get people to get free labor, I know we can get enough money to buy the materials. And I kept begging and begging. And finally, again, a man who just loved me from the time I was that 15-year-old boy when I joined the church out at Parish. He says, and our board chairman was Brother H.E. Reese. I'm sure you remember him. And he said, Brother Reese, I make a motion that let's give the man a chance. Let's see what happens. What does he want to do? Let him see what he can do in the basement. And I said, I wouldn't do it anyway unless Brother Parrish was working with me. He's the superintendent of the building. And if you give me permission, he is part of it. Because he knows building and I don't. I'll furnish the people and the material. And get know-how. I don't have the know-how either. I'm just an old dumb boy I want to change this church around if I can. And so they finally said, well, let's give him an opportunity. So they did, and I put on suppers, and the suppers would make a little money. But anyway, we got started, and I went around to see, I wanted to give some good old All Street people credit. I went around to Doris Epps' home to see her husband, Johnny Epps, who was a foreman for a painting contractor. I was trying to find out where I could get this free labor. So I went around there to see Johnny Epps, and he wasn't home, so I told Doris about it. And she said, I'll get him to call. So he called, and he said, okay, I'll see what I can find out tomorrow, and I'll call you, Gilbert. So he called me, and he said, I can get them this evening and tomorrow evening, but you got to feed them. I said, that's okay. My mother and father, my good wife and my mother will feed them. And I said, how many of it? He says, be 7. I said, good. So I went around to Garden Harvest, who was a long-time friend of mine that ran Harvey Hardware. And I told him my story about my church. And we were trying to do something about it, and we didn't have any money. And he said, don't worry about the money. What you need. So I said, I'll see that you get the money. So I told him about the paint and so forth. And I went across the street and got my friend over at Charlie Jenkins' who was a maintenance man for C&P Telephone, and a good one. And I said, I want you to be my chief advisor. I want you to be my superintendent. You tell me what you want. I'll just furnish you again, furnish the people and the materials, because you know how to do it. And he looked at me with that nice slow grin he had. He said, you sure you want me to do that, Gilbert? I said, I wouldn't be here if I didn't. And he said, okay. And so he did, and he was just fabulous. Well, we got started that day, and they fixed the walls up and put a ground coat on it. They got fed. The next day they came back. They got fed. They put the finishing coat on it, and that basement was really shaping up. And then I get this call from another one of my buddies down there by the name of Bernard Bass. And he worked for Northside Electric. He said, Gilbert, I'm working down here on Main Street, and my company is putting in some new light fixtures, and they're trading in these old ones, and he said they look like brand new, and it would be beautiful in that church up there. And I can get them for $100. You want me to get them? I said, I don't have any money, Bernard. I got to make money. He said, well, my boss said, don't worry about your money. If you want to buy them, he knows the church will pay him sometime $1. I said, well, who's going to put them in? He said, I'm going to get my buddy, and we're going to put them in. Well, fellows, in about 3 weeks, we had a pretty place down there. But everything we go to do would backfire, and they went to move the podium, and that fell in, and then I could just go on and on. But anyway, we wound up with a new cement floor with tile on it, with the primary department done over, with the beginners department done over, all on it in this basement. And that was the beginning of us making preparations for this 100th anniversary. And there was other men and ladies there working real hard. Everybody was working hard at Law Street. That's the thing, everybody.
Let me ask you this. I've got a bunch of pictures here, Gilbert, and I'm going to show you some of them, and you can tell me what is that picture right there?
Boy. Let me tell you. Fellows, this is a great story. This lady here was named Rose Sinclair. She lived down next to the last block on Laurel Street with her daughter. And so I'm Sunday school superintendent, so you know that I want to get all the people to Sunday school I can get, but I want to get them in Sunday school regardless of what I was, because I love the Sunday school. And so this dear lady made one of the greatest contributions that I've ever seen anybody do, anybody. I thought we had some people did some great things in that church, and they did. But this lady, I thought, kind of topped it all. She canvassed from the 400 block Laurel, of which that church was located, down to the river. And every Sunday morning you'd see this beautiful sight, this little lady coming on up Laurel Street. And it was anywhere would be from 8 to 12 children to bring to Laurel Street Sunday School. And this is our 100th anniversary. And this young man named Gilbert Ferguson, then he was young, and he said he's got to do something. He's got to remember this lady. She's been outstanding. She's done more than anybody. She's brought children up there. That's the heart of the Sunday school. And so I went to the Methodist Publishing House and got the best gold pen I could buy. And this is the day that we had the 100th anniversary, this Sunday. And I called Miss Sinclair up and presented her this love gift from Laurel Street Sunday School. And the nice part of this story, the climax, is I go down and drink coffee with 3 gentlemen, or 2 gentlemen every morning, almost every morning. 4 mornings out of 7 maybe. And one morning one of them said something about Laurel Street, and his name was Sinclair. This has only been 4 months ago, fellas. And I went upstairs, and I got to thinking, and the next day I said something, and he said something about Laurel Street. I said, did your mother know anybody on Laurel Street named Miss Landry that had the family that the children had the muscular dystrophy? He said, yeah, my mother was over there often to help that lady. I said, I'm meeting her son 56 years later at Imperial Plaza. Parson, thank you for giving me that privilege.
Now let me ask you about something else. That picture was taken in the basement, wasn't it, Gilbert?
Yes, sir.
And that's that new tile floor and
That's
all
the new,
and
that's
one of
all
the new
that,
light fixtures right up there at the top.
yeah, that's it.
There's another interesting part of this same story is that man, what was his son's name, first name?
Frank.
Frank's sister, whose name was also Rose, died back in December, and I had the privilege of conducting her funeral. And when she died, Frank's daughter called me up and said, do you happen to know anything about a gold pen that my grandmother had that Rose may have now? And I said, well, I'm sure you'll find it when you go through the things in her home. And that lady's granddaughter wore that pen to both her aunt's funeral, and then when Frank died back in January of this year,
16th of January.
She wore that same pen that you are pictured there giving her grandmother to his funeral.
Yeah, Miss Bailey.
So that story lives on along with a lot of
It certainly
others.
does. And this man that I met 56 years later died they found him dead on the 16th of January.
But you and he had connected again, and what a wonderful story.
This is a great story. I just thank God to being able to participate and things like that. And
let me have that a minute, Gilbert.
and
I'm
we
going to
got
give you all these pictures later.
We got a man.
But
Go ahead.
tell me about this one right now. The picture that you are there presenting the portrait, Solomon's Head of Christ.
It's Willie Adams. He was this one here. I can't give you much information on. I see my cousin standing back there, and I see the minister standing in the back. But my mind, and this is Rosa Gasser. The picture was presented to Rosa Gasser. That's who that picture was presented to.
And that's you there presenting it as a part of the 100th.
No, that wasn't part of the 100th anniversary. That was another time later there. This was, I believe this was after that.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Who is this gentleman right here? I know there have got to be some stories about him and behind him.
This was one of the most loyal, dedicated sextons that a church ever had. His name was Clayton Scott, and he was always there. And I would be so concerned in the wintertime about that coal furnace back there on Saturday nights that I would go back around now to see things was all right. And many times I would find Clayton Scott. But I hardly ever went there that I didn't see him. And he was a very soft-spoken. He was a good family man, I understand. And he worked at Laurel Street Church until he couldn't work anymore. He was just a loyal and dedicated man. You got something you'd like to add to that?
In case, just for the record, Tom Edwards is sitting off to the side, and so Gilbert will look over to him for some advice once in a
Absolutely,
while.
I cannot. That's
Well,
one
you
of
know-
my long-time, he's one of my long-time proteges over there. And the longer I live, it's like crabgrass growing. I just keep on loving him. He's been, fellows, he was just as solid in 1948 about Laurel Street Church as he is this one today.
Yeah.
And I thank God for him. He knows how I feel. I've told him.
Let me ask
And I
you
want
about
to tell the other one here
Ron
that I
Ragland
love
is
him
also
too.
here. Let me ask you about this picture, Gilbert. Is that a picture of the centennial celebration
Yep.
service?
Yeah, this is a picture that morning of that's Raleigh man, and he got all the Methodist conference down there, you
Yeah.
know, the big wheels of the Methodist conference. And this was our choir across the top. And this was just absolutely one Alabama day. I went down, I had a Jewish friend that was run out of Germany, or got out of Germany without being killed during the war. And he was one of the most intelligent people that I've ever met. He was a money changer in Hamburg, Germany. And some friend got him over here, and he brought him to the bakery. And, of course, he had a hard time speaking English, and he wanted to give him a job. And I gave him a job, and he turned out to be the best cashier Continental Bake Company ever had. Anyway, he had this friend, was a photographer downtown. So I went down and got him to come up and spend the day at Laurel Street Church. And we made these pictures, and I sold them for $1.25 a piece, the big ones, in order to pay for the photographer. I was still trying to make money, fellas.
The other picture I want to show you about that day is a picture that evidently was taken after the service out in front of the church.
Oh, I want to cry. These was my people. This was my Sunday school fellows. I'm sorry. These are the people that helped Gilbert Ferguson be what he is. And that guy's over there, he's in this picture. And some of his family, and my family, and my dear wife and little boy. I tell you, this picture I will just cherish. These were my people.
Yeah.
Thank you so kindly, Parson.
Well,
Thank you for bringing these pictures out and giving me an opportunity to express my love and kindness to the people at Laurel Street Methodist Church.
Okay, well, there's one more I want you to look at. And I think that's you right at the top there, so I think you will know which one that one is, too.
You got it. This is you would be in this one. This is 1948. You remember Dick Kendall, the Sunday school superintendent, when you came there? Well, here he is, and he died with cancer. I was assistant superintendent, and I became superintendent. And I declare, thanks again, boss, and thank you so much.
Okay, Gilbert, we're talking still, let me show you one more picture before you do that. We're still talking about that 100th anniversary celebration in 1949, and here's another picture from that day.
these are my people too. These are the people that gave me the green light.
That was the administrative board of the
That's the
church, wasn't it?
administrative board, and these were the people who believed in me. And I believed in them too. But I believed in everybody down there from that size on up. It didn't make any difference to me. But these were the people that I had to convince. And they certainly were loyal and dedicated to me. And once everything got going down there, it was just really a pleasure. And I'd get up on that podium every Sunday and beg, and I'd give them a bakery, my number at the bakery. And you know, by 7 or 8 o'clock every Sunday night, I had gotten what I had asked for that Sunday morning. Would you believe that?
Well,
so we just kept moving.
Yeah. Now, by the time that picture was taken, you'd also repainted the sanctuary too, hadn't you?
No, we didn't get the sanctuary yet. We had completed the basement, and we had those 2 towers that I showed you earlier on the church. And we got the tower that would lead up from the basement to the sanctuary in the church. We got that tower, and we got a little bit in the sanctuary. But later on, in 1951, we had our organ done over, and they had made me, the same group had made me chairman of the music committee, and I knew nothing about music. And but Miss Samuels, our organist, knew a lot of music, and Brother Reese, and a lady that's still living that I hope that you'll see if you haven't seen. Her name is Miss Sheridan, and she had one of the prettiest voices. She lived down on Spring Street. You know who I'm talking about, Tom? Nellie Lucienberg. And so when I needed advice, and I always needed it, they gave it to me. And we had the organ was done over, and I mean, it was done over in big style. And then we had new carpet, and then we really went at it. And it took us a little longer than 1949, but we got most of the job done, and we were real proud of it. It took a little bit longer. Raleigh Mann was with us for a good while. He was with us long enough for us to get things shaped up, and that was real important.
Now I want to. Well, you had wanted to tell me about this program here.
When I came out today, I thought about the 100th anniversary bulletin that I had that Willa gave me, Mr. Reese's wife, Mrs. Reese, after he died. It was something she wanted to give me, and she gave me his bulletin. He was superintendent of L.H. Jenkins' bookbindery over on Broad Street. And he made the cover and with the gold lettering and all on here. And she gave me this, and of course I have one. And I thought this would be an appropriate time for me to present it to my minister, to let it become a part of the archives of St. Andrew's United Methodist Church, and because he was the chairman of the board at that time. And Reverend Al, I would like to present to you this, to the board and to this church.
We will treasure this. We will put it in a very safe place, and it really will be a very important part of the history of this church. And we're grateful. Thank you so much.
And that has a lot of history of Laurel Street Church in it, as well as a bulletin for that Sunday.